Talia Monroe had spent 5 years becoming someone who did not exist. New name, new town, new life built from silence and caution. No past, no connections, no mistakes. Which is why the email on her screen made her heart stop. Subject: Corporate Acquisition Announcement. She almost ignored it. Almost. But the name of the acquiring corporation pulled the air straight from her lungs. Not fear, recognition. Because some nightmares do not die. They buy companies. The morning had started like every other morning in Ashford Creek. Quiet, predictable, safe. Or at least safe enough. Talia sat behind her dual monitors in the cramped IT office of Halcyon Tech Solutions, a company small enough that everyone still printed things they could have emailed. The hum of outdated servers filled the room like white noise. Comforting, ordinary, exactly how she liked it, until the whispers started. At first, it was just fragments drifting down the hallway. Did you hear? Black SUVs. Conference room. Something big. Talia frowned, fingers pausing above her keyboard. Small companies did not attract black SUVs. Small companies did not generate nervous energy before 9 a.m. Small companies especially did not make the receptionist nearly drop her coffee. But Halcyon Tech was doing all three. She stepped into the hallway. Clusters of employees stood unusually close together, voices low, eyes darting toward the glass-walled conference room at the end. Inside stood 3 strangers in tailored suits, and their CEO, Daniel Harper, smiling, too hard, too stiff. Talia felt something cold slide down her spine. Not danger exactly, but disturbance, like the air before a storm. By 10:30, the calendar invites hit. Mandatory all-hands meeting. No explanation, no details, just urgency. Talia sat in the back of the crowded conference room, arms folded, expression neutral, heartbeat absolutely not neutral. Daniel cleared his throat. Thank you, everyone, for gathering so quickly. His voice carried the brittle cheerfulness of a man trying not to look terrified. As of this morning, Halcyon Tech Solutions has entered into an acquisition agreement. The room erupted. Gasp, whispers, a stunned, "What?" Daniel raised his hands. Please, please, let me finish. Talia barely heard the next sentence because the slide behind him changed. And there it was, the logo, the name. Price Thomas Innovations. The world tilted. Her stomach dropped. Her pulse roared in her ears. 5 years. 5 carefully constructed years. And now, that name, that company, the very corporation tied to the scandal that had detonated her entire life. The corporation founded by... No. This could not be happening. New leadership transition, expanded resources, exciting opportunities. The words blurred. Talia's fingers dug into the edge of her chair because she knew something no one else in that room knew. Price Thomas Innovations was not just any corporation. It was the empire built from the ashes of betrayal. The company whose former CEO, Adam Thomas, now sat in federal prison. The company she had helped bring down. The company that had once tried to steal. Her breath caught. Her invention. Her patent. Her work. Then Daniel said the sentence that froze her blood completely. And I'd like to welcome the new CEO of Price Thomas Innovations. The door opened. Footsteps, measured, confident, unhurried. Talia looked up, and for the first time, she saw Julian Price, co-founder, visionary, the man who had survived the corporate collapse, the man who had rebuilt the brand, the man who had no idea that the quiet IT specialist sitting in the back row was the woman whose testimony had destroyed his former partner. Julian smiled politely at the room. Thank you for having me. Warm voice, calm presence, command without arrogance. Talia's heart pounded so hard it hurt because fate was cruel. But irony was merciless. Julian continued, we're excited about Halcyon Tech's proprietary technology. Talia's blood ran cold, particularly the patented security architecture developed here. Her vision blurred, which aligns perfectly with our future direction. Security architecture, patented, developed here. No, not here, by her, 5 years ago, before everything burned. Talia Monroe did not move, did not blink, did not breathe, because in that moment she realized Julian Price had not just entered her life, he had unknowingly come back for what was hers, and he had absolutely no idea who she really was. Some nightmares hunt you, others wait patiently and then shake your hand. 5 years earlier, before Ashford Creek, before the alias, before Talia Monroe became a ghost, back when she was simply Talia Monroe, Senior Systems Architect, Price Thomas Innovations, and everything still made sense. The office buzzed with the restless energy of a company on the rise. Glass walls, open workspaces, whiteboards covered in ambition. Talia barely noticed any of it. She was too focused on the code. Lines of encryption architecture flowed across her screen. Elegant, precise. Years of obsession distilled into something revolutionary. Her baby. Her breakthrough. Her patented adaptive security framework. Technology designed to evolve faster than breaches, faster than hackers, faster than anything else on the market. Still trying to change the world, Monroe. Talia smiled without looking up. She would recognize that voice anywhere. Adam Thomas, CEO, co-founder. Charm weaponized into leadership. He leaned casually against her desk. Expensive suit, effortless confidence, the kind of presence that filled a room, whether invited or not. You're hovering, she said. I'm admiring genius. She finally looked at him, amused. You want something. Adam grinned. I always want something. He pulled up a chair, lowering his voice. The board presentation next week. I want your framework front and center. Talia blinked. My framework? Our framework, he corrected smoothly. But something about the way he said it made her pause. A flicker. Small. Almost invisible. You've seen the projections, Adam continued. This changes the valuation overnight. It's not fully rolled out yet. It doesn't need to be. That answer came too quickly, too polished. Adam leaned closer. Trust me. 2 simple words, the most dangerous words in business. And Talia did trust him back then. 3 weeks later, the celebration started. Champagne, applause, press releases scheduled. Price Thomas Innovations had just secured the largest government cybersecurity contract in company history. Talia should have been thrilled. Instead, she was confused. She stared at the presentation slide, frozen on the auditorium screen. Thomas Adaptive Security Engine. Thomas, not Monroe, not Talia, not even joint credit. Her stomach tightened. She flipped through the technical brief, her algorithms, her logic pathways, her architecture, but the attribution, inventor, Adam Thomas. Her hands went cold. No, the word slipped out before she could stop it. Adam's office door closed with a soft click. Too soft, too calm, too final. You filed the patent, Talia said, voice shaking. Adam didn't look up from his desk. We filed the patent. My name isn't on it. Now he looked up and smiled, that same charming practice smile, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. It's complicated. No, it's theft. His expression hardened, just slightly, but enough. Talia, let's not be dramatic. Dramatic. The word hit like a slap. That technology is mine. Adam stood slowly, measured, predatory calm. Everything created here belongs to the company. I have documentation. We all have documentation. The room shifted, power realigning, truth bending under corporate weight. Adam stepped closer, lowered his voice. You're talented. Don't ruin your career over semantics. Semantics. She felt something fracture inside her chest. That night, alone in her apartment, Talia spread papers across the table. Emails, drafts, time-stamped builds, proof, so much proof. And then she saw it, buried deep in archived legal correspondence, a filing date, weeks earlier than she remembered, before her final submission, before her authorization. He hadn't just taken credit, he'd planned it. Talia leaned back, breath shallow, heart racing, mind spiraling into a terrifying clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was strategy. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it comes with a smile, a contract, and your name is quietly erased. 5 years earlier, long before lawsuits, before indictments, before headlines that would nearly destroy him, back when Julian Price believed in exactly two things, the future and Adam Thomas. The dorm room looked like chaos, wires across the floor, empty coffee cups, whiteboards crowded with ideas too big for the space. Julian thrived in it. Sleep is for people without vision, Adam declared from his desk. Julian laughed from the other side of the room. Says the man who fell asleep in algorithms yesterday. I was meditating. You were snoring. They had been inseparable since freshman orientation. Adam was the bold, magnetic, reckless dreamer. Julian was analytical, disciplined, the stabilizer. Together, unstoppable. What if security didn't just defend, Adam said one night. Julian looked up. What if it adapted? Julian's eyes lit instantly, like machine learning for breach patterns. Exactly. They stared at each other. That electric, dangerous moment when an idea stops being theory and becomes destiny. Price Thomas Innovations was born on a borrowed laptop in blind faith. Years blurred. The dorm room turned into a garage office, turned into real headquarters. Investors, press, momentum. Julian handled operations, structure, and scalability. Adam handled vision, charisma, big stage brilliance. They balanced each other, or so Julian thought. "You're the engine," Adam told him once. "You're the spark," Julian replied. They meant it, every word. Success attracts pressure. Pressure reveals character. Julian noticed the changes slowly. Adam growing more controlling, more secretive, more territorial about certain projects. Legal's handling it, Adam would say. Finance approved it. Trust me. Trust me. Julian never imagined those words would become a weapon. Julian's phone wouldn't stop ringing, emails flooding in, board members demanding emergency meetings. Subject lines: urgent, federal inquiry, media request, legal exposure risk. He stared at the screen, pulse pounding. What the hell? Then came the article, front page, brutal, unforgiving. Price Thomas, CEO, accused of patent fraud and corporate theft. Julian's blood ran cold. No, he whispered it like denial could rewrite reality. Adam's office, the door slammed shut. "Tell me this isn't real," Julian demanded. Adam looked tired, but not shocked, not outraged, not even defensive. "It's being handled." "Handled? The FBI is involved." "It's a misunderstanding." Julian stared at him, searching his face, looking for the friend he'd built an empire with. Instead, he saw something unfamiliar. Distance, calculation, fear, but not of guilt, fear of consequence. "What did you do?" The silence was answer enough. Investigations, audits, freezing of assets, investors fleeing like smoke. Julian sat alone in the boardroom one night, tie loosened, world imploding. Years of sacrifice, years of belief, all poisoned. And the worst part? He hadn't known. I hadn't seen it, hadn't stocked it. Adam Thomas arrested, charges filed, evidence overwhelming, testimony devastating. Julian watched the news coverage in stunned silence, because betrayal by a partner is business. Betrayal by a brother, that's grief. Julian Price didn't just lose a company. He lost the version of his life that had made sense. And somewhere inside the storm of indictments and scandal, a woman named Talia Monroe was preparing to testify, a name he would never forget, even if he never saw her face. The courthouse steps were swarmed. Cameras, reporters, speculation dressed as certainty. Price Thomas Innovations had become a national spectacle. Corporate fraud, patent theft, federal charges, and at the center of it all, Adam Thomas. Julian sat rigid in the gallery, dark suit, unreadable expression, a man holding himself together by force. He barely recognized the person at the defense table. Adam looked smaller, not physically, but energetically, like power had leaked out of him. Julian's jaw tightened, because 5 months ago, Adam had commanded boardrooms. Now he avoided eye contact with everyone. The prosecutor stood, calm, precise, surgical. The government calls Talia Monroe. Julian's head snapped up. The name rippled through the courtroom. Soft murmurs, curiosity, recognition. But Julian felt something else, a strange tightening in his chest, because that name had been everywhere in the filings, every accusation, every charge. She walked in quietly, no drama, no theatrics, just a woman carrying the weight of truth. Simple navy suit, composed posture, but her eyes steady, unflinching. Julian stared. Something about her presence unsettled him. Not familiarity, but impact. Please state your name for the record. Talia Monroe. Occupation? Senior Systems Architect, formerly employed by Price Thomas Innovations. Formerly. That word echoed. The prosecutor approached. Did you develop the adaptive security framework central to this case? Yes. Did you authorize Adam Thomas to file the patent in his name? No. The courtroom shifted, energy thickening. Can you explain what happened? Talia inhaled slowly, and then she dismantled Adam Thomas with facts, documentation, time-stamped builds, internal correspondence, proof layered upon proof. Julian felt his stomach drop with every revelation, because this wasn't a rumor, wasn't interpretation, wasn't exaggeration. It was theft, cold, deliberate, calculated. Adam didn't look at Talia, didn't challenge her, didn't react, which somehow made it worse. Julian leaned back, pulse roaring in his ears, memories colliding violently, dorm room dreams, late nights, shared ambition, all now reframed through betrayal. He whispered under his breath, "My God, Adam, what did you do?" The courtroom overflowed, tension vibrating through every seat. On the count of corporate fraud, guilty. On the count of intellectual property theft, guilty. Each word landed like a hammer. Adam Thomas, visionary, founder, friend, led away in handcuffs. Julian didn't move, couldn't, because grief and rage are paralyzing when they arrive together. Headlines, market collapse, board resignations, financial hemorrhage. Julian inherited the wreckage, debt, lawsuits, a brand in ashes. And somewhere in protective custody paperwork, Talia Monroe disappeared. One lost everything because she told the truth. One lost everything because he believed the wrong person. 5 years later, fate would put them in the same room again, only this time, neither would recognize the other's scars. Present day. Ashford Creek had never felt unsafe before, but safety is a fragile illusion when your past walks back in wearing a tailored suit. Talia's phone rang just after lunch. "Talia, Daniel needs you in conference room B." Her stomach tightened instantly. Did he say why? No, but Julian Price is in there. Of course he was, because the universe clearly enjoyed stress testing her nervous system. Talia smoothed her expression, though her pulse was already sprinting. 5 years of training, 5 years of learning how to appear calm, 5 years of surviving by never looking shaken. Still, her hands were ice cold. Julian stood near the window when she entered, jacket off, sleeves slightly rolled, reviewing documents. Talia stopped for half a second, because photographs hadn't done him justice. He looked human, Not the distant corporate figure from news clips, not the cold symbol of a company tied to her destruction. Just a man, focused, tired maybe, but undeniably present. Julian turned and smiled politely. Talia Monroe, right? Her heart stuttered. The name, that name, her real name. But then she remembered. Alias, of course. To him, this was just paperwork identity, not history. Yes, she said evenly. I've heard you're the backbone of Halcyon's systems. Backbone. If only he knew. Julian gestured to the chair. Please, sit. His voice carried warmth, but authority lived underneath it, effortless. We're reviewing Halcyon's patented security architecture, he continued. Talia's spine stiffened, every nerve alert. I'd like your technical insight. Insight, not interrogation, not suspicion. Still, danger hummed beneath the surface. Julian slid a document across the table. Talia's breath caught because she recognized the diagrams instantly. Her diagrams, her logic structures, her design philosophy, except now rebranded, refined, marketed through Halcyon. Her past staring back at her under a different company's letterhead. Julian watched her carefully. You okay? Too late. Her reaction had flickered. Tiny, but he'd seen it. Fine, she replied quickly. Julian tilted his head slightly, not convinced. You designed parts of this system? He asked. Careful tone, genuine curiosity. Talia hesitated, measured the risk, chose precision. I contributed. Julian nodded slowly, respectful, interested. Well, he said, it's brilliant work. Her chest tightened because praise from him was complicated. Julian leaned back, studying her. Not flirtation, not suspicion. Something quieter. I feel like there's a story here. Talia's pulse spiked. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. Most people don't look at technology like it's personal. Her breath caught because he was closer to the truth than he realized. For a moment, neither spoke. The air was thick, silence charged, recognition without context. Then Julian stood, offering his hand. Looking forward to working with you, Talia. Talia stared at his hand because 5 years ago, his company had destroyed her life. 5 years later, its CEO was shaking her hand. She forced her fingers to move. Their skin touched, and something shifted. Subtle, dangerous, impossible to define. Talia Monroe had spent 5 years hiding from the past. Now she was reporting directly to it. And the most terrifying part? Julian Price didn't feel like an enemy. Julian Price did not believe in coincidences. Not in business, not in acquisitions, not in technology. Especially not in technology. The Ashford Creek corporate apartment was silent, minimalist, impersonal. Exactly how Julian preferred temporary living spaces. No distractions. No emotional clutter. Only work. His laptop glowed in the dim light. Halcyon Tech Solutions files filled the screen. Financials, staff reports, patent portfolios, and the one folder he had opened 3 times already. Patented Security Architecture, Halcyon Tech. Julian leaned back slowly, eyes narrowed, mind racing. This shouldn't exist. He whispered it to the empty room, because Halcyon's patented framework should have been impossible. Too advanced, too elegant, too familiar. He enlarged the diagrams, studied the logic flows, the adaptive layers, the behavioral evolution loops. A cold recognition crept in, because he had seen this design philosophy before, years ago, buried inside a scandal that nearly buried him. Julian opened another file, an archived internal litigation document, long sealed, long avoided. Case reference, Federal versus Adam Thomas. Primary evidence source, Talia Monroe. There it was again, that name, like an echo that refused to fade. He stared at the screen, jaw tightening. Talia Monroe. Julian pulled Halcyon's patent summary side by side with the old case materials. His pulse slowed, dangerously slow. The structural patterns, the adaptive security logic, even the way the framework anticipated breach behavior. Not identical, but close enough to whisper a disturbing possibility. Julian rubbed his temple, because there were only two explanations. Either Halcyon independently created a framework eerily similar to the stolen technology, or someone connected to the original design was here. And Julian did not believe in eerily similar. He clipped open a confidential acquisition memo, marked private. Primary acquisition driver, Halcyon Tech proprietary security framework. Strategic value, next generation adaptive defense engine. Competitive advantage, potential industry disruption. Julian exhaled slowly, because Halcyon's technology was not just attractive, it was transformational. The kind of breakthrough capable of redefining Price Thomas Innovation's future. The kind of breakthrough worth buying an entire company for. Julian paused, memory flickering. The IT specialist, quiet, controlled, observant. The way she looked at the diagrams, not impressed, not curious, but haunted. Julian sat forward slowly. Who are you, Talia Monroe? Talia stood at her window, lights off, heart restless. Ashford Creek suddenly feeling smaller, closer, less anonymous, because she had seen the way Julian studied her, measured her, noticed things he shouldn't have noticed. And instinct, that hard-earned survival instinct, was screaming. He wasn't just reviewing systems. He was searching for something. And Talia feared she knew exactly what. Julian Price had bought a company for its technology. He didn't yet realize he had also bought a secret, a past, and the woman at the center of both. Talia noticed the change immediately, not in Julian's tone, not in his posture, but in his attention. Most executives walk through offices. Julian observed them. He moved slowly past desks, offering polite smiles, exchanging light conversation. But his eyes were working, collecting, measuring, connecting dots no one else knew existed. And Talia felt every second of it. She was halfway through a firewall update when his voice came from behind her. Morning, Talia. Her shoulders stiffened before she could stop them. Julian leaned lightly against her doorway, coffee in hand, expression unreadable. Morning. Her voice was calm, carefully neutral. I've been reviewing Halcyon's framework again. Talia resisted the urge to sigh. Of course you have. You've been here how long? The question sounded casual. It wasn't. About 4 years. The lie arrived smoothly, well practiced. Julian nodded slowly. So you were here when the patent was filed? Yes. What was that process like? Too precise. Way too precise. Talia shrugged lightly. Standard. Legal handled most of it. Julian didn't respond. He simply watched her, which somehow felt heavier than words. You don't strike me as someone who handled most of it, he said quietly. Talia's fingers froze above the keyboard. She turned slowly, met his gaze. What does that mean? Julian's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained sharp. It means you look at this system like you know it intimately. A pulse of heat rushed through her chest, danger humming just beneath the surface. I work in IT, Julian. Intimacy with systems is kind of the job description. The name left her lips effortlessly, natural, unforced. A flicker crossed his expression, subtle but unmistakable. Most employees didn't use his first name so easily. Julian smiled faintly, but he didn't retreat. Have you ever worked with adaptive security frameworks before Halcyon? Her heartbeat kicked hard. No. Too fast, too clean. Julian noticed. She saw it in the slight narrowing of his eyes. He took a slow sip of coffee, still watching her, still thinking. Because something wasn't aligning. Most IT specialists answered confidently, comfortably, without that fractional hesitation, without that flicker of calculation. Have we met before? The air vanished from the room. Talia's chest tightened. What? Julian tilted his head slightly, studying her face like a memory just out of reach. I don't know, he said slowly. There's something familiar. 5 years of hiding. 5 years of erasing footprints. And now? Talia laughed softly, controlled, believable. I think I'd remember meeting a CEO. A long beat passed between them. Julian held her gaze, then finally stepped back. Maybe, but he didn't sound convinced. Talia's composure cracked the second he disappeared down the hall, her breathing uneven, hands trembling. Because Julian Price wasn't just curious, he was circling. Some questions are harmless, others are warnings, and Julian Price had just started asking the dangerous kind. Julian Price had built his career on one guiding principle. When something feels off, it usually is. The city outside the window slept. Julian did not. His laptop glowed against the darkness, employee files open, cursor blinking, patience thinning. Search, Talia Monroe. He leaned back slightly as her HR profile filled the screen. Everything looked correct. Too correct. Employment history, clean. Education, verified. References, documented. No gaps, no irregularities, no inconsistencies. Julian frowned, because real lives were never this tidy. He zoomed in on the timeline. 4 years at Halcyon Tech. Before that, a mid-sized consulting firm. Before that, another perfectly structured role. Julian's jaw tightened. People didn't move through careers like chess pieces unless 1. They were extremely lucky. 2. They were extremely strategic. Or 3. They were hiding something. Julian opened a private background database, the kind executives didn't officially use, but did. He typed again. Talia Monroe. Loading. No criminal record. No litigation. No financial distress markers. But then, a pause. A flicker. Limited historical data prior to year X. Julian sat forward slowly. Limited historical data? That wasn't normal. That was engineered. Without thinking, Julian opened another file, one he had avoided for years. Archive case materials, Federal versus Adam Thomas. He scrolled, eyes sharp, memory uneasy, and there it was. Primary witness, Talia Monroe. Julian froze, pulse slowing, mind racing. Same name, different woman. Impossible coincidence. Or not a coincidence at all. He pulled both profiles side by side. Courtroom records, employee file. Different birth dates, different identifiers, different everything. But still, Talia Monroe. He whispered it into the silence. Because something about Halcyon's Talia, something about her eyes, her tension, her reaction to the framework did not feel random anymore. Talia couldn't sleep. The unease had been building for days, subtle, persistent, impossible to ignore, like being watched without seeing anyone watching. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She grabbed it instantly, heart pounding. Unknown number, no message. But dread slid through her chest anyway, because survival instincts didn't misfire. They remembered patterns. And Julian Price asking questions felt like the beginning of one. Julian Price wasn't just curious now. He was investigating. And Talia Monroe had spent 5 years preparing for many things, except being found by the one man who wasn't even looking for her. Tuesday morning at Halcyon Tech. Julian didn't knock. He rarely did anymore. Talia looked up from her monitor as he entered the IT office. No coffee this time. No polite smile. Only focus. Her pulse reacted instantly. Something's wrong. We need to talk. Not harsh, not loud, but stripped of casual warmth. Talia turned slowly in her chair, mask sliding firmly into place. Okay. Julian closed the door behind him. Soft click. Thunderous impact. He placed a thin folder on her desk. Deliberate. Controlled. I reviewed your employment records. Ice shot through her veins. And? Julian's eyes didn't leave her face. You have an unusually clean history. Talia forced a small, confused frown. I'm not sure that's a problem. For most people, it wouldn't be. Beat. But for someone working on technology this advanced? Silence flooded the room. Limited historical data prior to your consulting years. Her stomach dropped. He dug deeper. Care to explain that? I didn't realize my past required executive review. Julian's jaw tightened slightly. Not angry, but closing in. It does when things don't add up. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. Who were you before Halcyon, Talia? The question landed like a detonation. Too close, too sharp, too dangerous. Talia stood abruptly, chair scraping. I've given this company 4 years of my life. Breathing uneven now, emotion creeping in. My work speaks for itself. Julian didn't move, didn't retreat. I'm not questioning your work. Beat. I'm questioning what you're not telling me. Something inside Talia snapped, tiny but catastrophic. Maybe if your company hadn't, she stopped. Too late. Julian's eyes sharpened instantly. Hadn't what? Her heart slammed against her ribs. Idiot, idiot, idiot. Talia turned away quickly, mind racing for recovery. Hadn't buried Halcyon in acquisition chaos. A lie. Fragile, desperate. Julian stared at her back. Stillness dangerous. Because that reaction, that was an irritation. That was history. My company? He repeated quietly. Talia froze. He stepped closer. You said that like it cost you something. She turned back slowly, eyes flashing. All acquisitions cost people something. Their gazes locked, tension thick, charged, unstable. Julian's voice dropped, almost a whisper. You're not just an IT specialist. Silence. You're connected to this technology. Talia's breath hitched, barely visible, but he saw it. Because in that moment, both of them realized Julian was getting closer to the truth, and Talia Monroe was running out of safe answers.